Panelists, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great,
yes,
thank
I
you.
can hear you.
Great, thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm Vicki Healy and would like to welcome you to today's webinar hosted by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Today's webinar is focused on the Nuclear Innovation Clean Energy Future, which is an initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial that is creating opportunities for cross-sectoral cooperation. I switch slides. Real quickly before we begin the webinar, a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to go over with you. First of all, for audio, you have two options. You may either listen through your computer or over your telephone. If you choose to listen through your computer, please select the mic and speakers option, which you'll find in the audio pane on the right side of your screen. And if you choose to dial in by phone, please select the telephone option, and a box on the right-hand side will display the telephone number and audio pin that you will use to dial in. If you have any technical difficulties with the webinar, you may contact the GoToWebinar Help Desk at 888-259-3826 for assistance. But please note that this is a US-based phone number. Questions. If you would like to ask a question, we ask that you use the questions pane, again found on the right-hand side of your screen, and there you can type in your question. When you type in your question, I would ask that you please note which panelist or panelists you would like for me to direct your question to, and I'll be happy to do that. Also, I'd like to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording and presentations that you're seeing today will be added to our YouTube channel at the link that is provided on this slide. Quickly, I'd like to go over the agenda. Today's webinar is centered around presentations that provide an overview of the Clean Energy Ministerial and an introduction and informative overview of the NICE Future Initiative. Before we launch into the presentations, I will provide a quick introduction of our esteemed panelists. And then following their presentations, we will have a question and answer session where the panelists will address questions submitted by our audience. First up, I would like to introduce our speakers. First up, we have Dion Cameron, who will provide an overview of the Clean Energy Ministerial and an introduction to the NICE Future Initiative. Dion is the Director of Nuclear Energy in the Ministry of Natural Resources, Canada. Following Dion, Koichiro Maruta will tell you about the current status of the initiative. Koichiro is the Deputy Director of Japan's Office for International Nuclear Agency for Natural Resource and Energy at the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry in Japan. And then following Ken, we will hear from Sarah Lennon, who serves as the Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Nuclear Energy Policy and Cooperation in the United States Department of Energy, Office of Nuclear Energy. Sarah will discuss how you and others can engage in this exciting initiative. And once, the panelists complete their introductions, I'll take a moment, and now I will take a moment to pass the controls over and welcome Dion to the webinar. So give me one moment to pass those controls over. Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dion Cameron. I'm the Director of the Nuclear Energy Division at the Department of Natural Resources with the Federal Government of Canada. It's my pleasure to be on this webinar this evening and to provide an introduction first, an overview, a little bit about the Clean Energy Ministerial Framework, and then an introduction to the specific initiative that is the topic of tonight's webinar, that is the Nuclear Innovation Clean Energy Future, or as we like to call it, the NICE Future Initiative. Next slide, please. Once I've had a chance to provide an introduction to the Nice Future initiative, I'll pass the microphone to my colleague from Japan, Koichiro Maruta, who will provide a current status of the initiative, and then over to U.S. Department of Energy, Sarah Lennon, where Sarah will be able to provide and speak to opportunities for engagement by yourselves and your organizations that you represent. Next slide, please. So I'll start with a little bit about the Clean Energy Ministerial Framework overall. Next slide. The Clean Energy Ministerial, or the CEM, C-E-M as we like to call it, CEM, is a high-level global forum. The focus is to promote policies and programs that advance clean energy technology, where we can share lessons learned and share best practices and encourage the transition to a global clean energy economy. It is an international or a multilateral initiative with 24 member countries, plus the European Commission. Together, the CEM member countries represent an estimated 90% of global clean energy investments and an estimated 75% of global carbon dioxide emissions, making this a very important platform for discussions about international clean energy initiatives and the transition to low carbon future. The CEM is focused on 3 global climate and energy policy goals. 1, to improve energy efficiency worldwide. 2, to enhance clean energy supply. And 3, to expand clean energy access. Next slide, please. It is a multilateral initiative, but it's a different kind of initiative, and it's unique in a number of ways. For starters, it is distributed and shared leadership. In other words, under the CEM, there are a number of initiatives and campaigns, a series of coalitions or collaborations among interested and willing members. So each initiative, such as the Nice Future initiative, is driven by member countries that wish to participate. There is no expectation that all member countries will participate in every initiative. Each is a collaboration among interested countries. So it is voluntary and collaborative. There is no negotiated communiques. There are no consensus texts. In other words, it's a space for collaboration and for bright ideas to be brought forward by small groups of countries, or in some cases large groups of countries that wish to focus on a common area of interest. It is a member-driven initiative, but the initiatives and the campaigns are not restricted to member countries only. Other countries that are not members of CEM can also participate, and participation can be extended to private sector and international organizations and civil society organizations. So it's a very flexible space to advance our global common interest in transition to low carbon and to a clean future. Next slide, please. There are annual meetings of ministers. There have been 8 ministerial meetings so far. These are opportunities for countries, member countries, to meet at the highest levels and share progress and get a sense of priority direction for continued collaboration in the initiatives and the campaigns. CEM 9 is the next ministerial meeting. It will take place in Copenhagen in Denmark on May 24th, 2018, so just next month, actually later this month. And it will happen as I mentioned, in Copenhagen in Denmark, but it is co-located with the 3rd Mission Innovation Ministerial, which is a related multilateral initiative on clean energy innovation. The Mission Innovation Ministerial meeting will be happening literally across the bridge in Malmö, Sweden. So we very much look forward to updates from member countries on past initiatives, but also this is our opportunity to launch the Clean Energy Nice Future initiative in Copenhagen later this month. Next slide, please. So having set the stage with a little bit of background information about the overall framework, I'll now turn to the details of the Nice Future initiative. Next slide, please. I'll start by setting out our driving rationale. Why did Canada, the US, and Japan seek to develop an initiative on the NICE future, an initiative that focuses on nuclear energy within the context of this overall clean energy ministerial process? The rationale is quite straightforward. Nuclear energy is an important contributor to global clean energy supply. It is a low-emitting source of energy, and it will continue to play a role in meeting our future clean energy goals. That's true domestically in Canada, it's true in other countries, and it's true around the world. Even so, strategic planning for future clean energy systems doesn't always include discussion about nuclear energy. We hear a lot about other innovative areas of clean energy, including energy efficiency, demand-side management, variable renewables, and yet discussions about nuclear often take place on the margins or in a different forum. As a result, there remains a need for a dialogue on the role of nuclear alongside the other forms of clean energy in an integrated and holistic manner. Next slide, please. On this slide, we've listed a number of existing multilateral fora where countries get together and discuss nuclear energy and nuclear energy innovation. The Nuclear Energy Agency, for example, where there are 33 member countries. And here on the slide, we've listed the specific niche that is filled by each one of these fora. The Nuclear Energy Agency, we speak amongst OECD countries about scientific, technological, and legal bases for safe, environmentally sound, and economical uses of nuclear energy. But when we get together at this table, countries send their nuclear experts to this table. And so we have very detailed and very thoughtful discussions, but we have discussions amongst nuclear energy specialists at this forum. The same is generally true at the International Atomic Energy Agency, although that is a much broader membership, 169 countries. The focus is exclusively on nuclear. Generation 4 International Forum, 13 countries plus Euratom. This is about R&D and next generation. International Framework for Nuclear Energy Cooperation, or as we call it, IFNEC, 34 plus countries. This is an informal setting where we share lessons learned and best practices. But again, amongst nuclear ministries or nuclear leaders within each member country. And lastly, Mission Innovation, which is related to STEM, 22 countries plus the European Union, but this is focused on research and development. The point that this slide is trying to make is that there are extensive international engagements already taking place in the area of nuclear energy, but these are happening very much amongst nuclear experts. And with the next slide, please. We'd like to take a moment to reflect on what the STEM opportunity is. Why should we bring nuclear energy to the Clean Energy Ministerial Dialogue? What is the unique opportunity that is represented by bringing nuclear to this new table that does not duplicate what we're already doing at the other tables? And for us, the point is clear. This is a place for a policy dialogue across energy subsectors. We are bringing nuclear energy to discussions that extend beyond existing fora to inform clean energy policymakers more broadly. We're raising nuclear energy to a ministerial level discussion. And we are encouraging collaboration and knowledge sharing among interested countries in the role of nuclear and integrated energy systems. Next slide, please, which elaborates on these points even further. To say that our objective is to start a dialogue on the role that nuclear energy can play in bolstering clean energy innovation, economic growth, energy security and access, and environmental stewardship in support of clean energy goals. The bottom line here is that we're elevating nuclear not only to a ministerial level, but we're bringing nuclear to non-nuclear audiences, both from the perspective of policymakers in the broader sphere of clean energy, beyond just nuclear energy policymakers, and developing partnerships with our colleagues who work on renewable energy, and who work on energy efficiency, broadening the dialogue, and ensuring that the full optionality and of clean energy options for the future of the planet is considered in a realistic way that takes into consideration all of the relative advantages and challenges associated with each of the options. Essentially recognizing that there is no silver bullet, there is no perfect option. Otherwise, we would have already all adopted it. And so as we face this challenge globally, this clean energy challenge globally, that we are doing so with our policymakers and our highest level discussions being fully informed by all of the options across the energy space, and that will include nuclear energy. Next slide, please. And so we have proposed that the scope of the Nice Future initiative would allow both for consideration of full-scale nuclear power for baseload electricity, much of which reflects the importance of Generation 3 or current generation nuclear power plants that are in operation around the world, but also allows for consideration of advanced or next generation nuclear technologies, innovative applications for nuclear, and coordinated or hybridized nuclear renewable energy systems. Here we're talking about applications that are both for power generation and non-power generation. So we might have here small modular reactors that are able to provide combined heat and power for heavy industry, or we might have a hybridized nuclear renewable system where the nuclear component dynamically load follows the variable renewable in the system to provide flexible and responsive power for a grid. Next slide, please. Across those two thematic areas, we propose to focus on these 4 areas. One, providing technology evaluations and technology briefings, plain language briefings for clean energy policymakers, so that they know what the realm of the possible is, so that we are challenging their assumptions about nuclear energy, that nuclear energy isn't just about your grandfather's nuclear power plant, which was providing very valuable large-scale baseload electricity, but making sure that policymakers also know about the innovations in nuclear energy that are coming down the pipeline. The second focus area is engagement of policymakers and stakeholders regarding the full optionality of energy choices for the future. The third area of focus is economics and market valuation, developing our understanding of market structures, power market structures, and financing issues associated with clean energy projects, including nuclear energy projects. And the fourth area of focus is communications. Communications about nuclear energy's role in integrated clean energy systems for the future. Next slide, please. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and pass the microphone to my esteemed colleague from Japan, Koichiro Maruta.
Thank you. My name is Koichiro Maruta from Japan, Japanese Ministry of Economy, Japan Energy Agency. So I would like to explain about the current status of this initiative. So please, next slide. So the current status of initiative I would like to explain today, mainly 3 pillars. The first is about the engagement with countries, and the second one is work on development, and third one is lab launch event. So I will explain the details of each one by one. So move to the next slide, please. So the first, the engagement with countries. Now, currently, 13 of 25 SEM members countries have indicated some interest in the initiative, plus 4 non-SEM members. Besides the co-lead of US, Japan, and Canada, these countries listed here have stated interest to join. UAE, South Africa, Russia, Romania, Poland, Argentina. So we would welcome non-SEM member countries, especially namely like Argentina, Poland, and Romania. Thank you for all. And so I don't know who are here, but so please next slide, please. So, and I have mentioned about the countries, but also this initiative, I would like to invite like the industries or researchers. So, Nice Future Initiative will work with a wide range of both nuclear energy and non-nuclear energy focused policy and technology organizations. So, our initiative will invite views of members of industry, research organization, and civil society. For example, like think tanks, environmental organizations, and communities. Next slide, please. And then we'll move to the work plan development. So areas of activity is listed here. The first, the three categories of activities. US, Canada, and Japan have worked on work plan development, including our activities as well as the operating agency and the way of joining the initiative. So three categories listed here. The first one is initiate a cross-sectoral dialogue among expert and energy policymakers. So under this initiative, we will share the information, best practices, experiences among the members. And second is develop and disseminate resource for policymakers. And we plan to develop the report and other resources for provides the resources for policymakers. The third is about like build partnerships through outreach and engagement activities. So we will plan to have events, online platform, social media. So for using these things, we would like to multiply the impact of Nice Future. So, and the four cross-cutting themes. These are, themes we and our colleagues discussed so far. Is evaluation of the current and emerging technologies, scenarios for future energy choices for policymakers. Third is economics and financial analysis. And fourth is communicating nuclear energy role in integrated energy systems. These things would be important for, how can I say, provide some potential, maximize the potential of the nuclear with other renewables, other energy resources. So I'll move, please, next slide, please. So then this slide shows like the activities and the key deliverables we plan to have in the first year. So activities and initial deliverables is first is about like initiate a cross-sectoral dialogue. One is hosting a keystone event or a workshop. For example, coming this November, we will have a IFNEC conference in Tokyo. So we would like to have side event with IFNEC conference. And also we will have SEM10th meeting next year in Canada. So we plan to have side event there. And also launch a webinar series. So today, this one is the first one. So we would like to have monthly webinar series where we invite specialists who can talk about like a potential of the nuclear or like some technological things which would help our understanding or like our kind of future potential. And second is develop and disseminate resource for policymakers. So as I mentioned, we will produce a synthesis report that's based on our kind of a webinar series, like a side event we will have, and including the advanced nuclear energy systems or like technologies, SMRs, or other some kind of potential kind of innovations. And also, we will provide policy assistance through the Ninth Clean Energy Solution Centers. We call Ask an Expert service. So you guys can talk with the expert through this service. And third one, build working group in topic area, build partnerships through outreach and engagement. So we will establish Nice Future Council, which is a kind of a stakeholders network. And also we will expand existing green energy combustion and also as well taking the combustion online. So next slide, please. So, and we will launch the event at SEM9, which will be held on May 24. The time is from 1:30 to 2:30. So this is a, on this slide, I just put the potential agenda to be have discussed. So this is a kind of agenda we discussed with our colleagues. And the final point I'd like to add is we would have extended fourth session at 1:25 p.m. and 2:30. So if you guys have interest in joining and you'd like to be in the photo, please take note of this time schedule. And also, beside this side event, we will have the third parties visual exhibition there. So please, next slide, please. So this is my final presentation. So this is a kind of an image of the integrated system, nuclear and renewables. So please look at the center yellow boxes. This is reactors. And this picture showed like how kind of a future image of the collaboration between nuclear and renewables. So our kind of initiative is kind of the place where both potential nuclear and renewables would cooperate with. So I believe nuclear and renewable do not compete with each other, but help with each other. So this would kind of help or like kind of a broader our potential for the future. So thank you for listening to my presentation, and I would like to ask my colleagues from the about the rest of the presentation. Thank you for listening.
Hi, this is Sarah Lennon from the Office of Nuclear Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy. And to finish out our webinar presentation, I wanted to talk a little bit about how organizations, countries, industries can get engaged, and also a little bit on our guiding principles for the initiative. Next slide, please. So here you can see our structure, and the beautiful thing about SEM initiatives and our Nice Future initiative is that it's informal, it's flexible, it's, as Dion mentioned in the beginning, we don't have structured statements that are pre-made and issued formally. People can get engaged as the topics move them, as the topics fit their personal or organizational interests. And as we heard in the beginning, our U.S. National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL, is currently helping us out to get started. We see them as an operating agent to provide us much needed and much appreciated support. That is not to say that there couldn't be other operating agents for particular activities in other countries as the initiative moves forward. Our guiding principles, you can see here, again, it's voluntary. No one has to join. No one has to participate in all the activities of the initiative. And the idea here is that this is sharing information. We want other countries to join, we want other organizations to participate. They can organize, coordinate, lead, join forces with other organizations in other countries to put on an activity or a workshop or provide information. So we're really sharing and broadening the information highway here. And individual authority, every Nice Future participant, be it a government agency or a company or some multilateral organization, whatever a participant wants to put into it, they control that those resources. There's not an overarching board that will say that money goes towards a particular activity or anything like that. And then the final guiding principle there that you can see is transparency. And as I mentioned, the first bullet, it's voluntary. So not everyone has to participate in each and every activity, but we want to make sure that the information is shared, communicated, timely fashion, and transparent among all Nice Future initiative participants. We will be relying on the SEM Secretariat initially to share and broadcast information, and then perhaps as working groups get stood up or as activities start, we'll have other networks as well to share information. Next slide, please. So we support, encourage, desire engagement with governments and with industry, companies, industrial organizations, and all different pieces of civil society. So we're looking to work with a broader spectrum of people, initiatives, or entities to support our initial set of nice future deliverables, which Co mentioned a couple of slides back. And one way to do that is to provide information. And there may be existing information or reports that have not been discussed or socialized in the nuclear energy realm that would be beneficial. So that's one way that entities can get engaged or participate in our events or workshops or future webinars, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And other events, if there are other conferences that people know about, then we can share information about that and broaden the conversation, as Dion mentioned in the beginning. Delivering engagement events, I think I sort of touched on that, and then sharing outcomes with your own networks. You know, we know sort of the nuclear networks, but we are looking to broaden that conversation. And so if an organization or a government representative attends an event or participates in a workshop, and then hopefully that information about what that participant did can be shared with broader networks as well. And the key here, the buzzword is cross-sectoral, as you know, is in the title of our webinar today, to go across policy and technical, across all the spectrum of clean energy to broaden the dialogue. Next slide, please. So it's a little bit different for countries to get involved than industry. So here, for countries, SEM members and non-SEM member countries can join by letting us know before the SEM 9 Ministerial or at the launch event. Our contact information is at the end of the slide deck, so we are easily reachable, and we hope to hear from additional countries before May 24th. And same thing, non-SEM member countries can indicate their interest by reaching out to us by phone, email. I think we will have a website at some point. It's not launched yet, but we're working on it. Okay, next slide. So for industry and civil society, we invite interested parties to propose or to give us written proposals on concrete opportunities on how they see a partnership possibility with this initiative. And as one might imagine, it would have to align with the objectives and principles of the initiative and really focus or target the key audiences, clean energy stakeholders, the public, obviously. And as we've mentioned, the cross-sectoral piece is really important, so significant weight will be given to proposals that focus on or that target clean energy stakeholders outside of our nuclear realm to expand the conversation. So there's how you can submit a proposal right now. And next slide, please. So Co mentioned a little bit about our Nice Future Council as part of our year one deliverable activities. And the idea for this council is to have dialogue at a strategic level and sort of provide guidance, suggestions, ideas, and it will be non-governmental actors included to help actors who are in the clean energy system world and potential end users of this clean energy. And as you can see in the third bullet there, it's the whole gamut of who can be involved. But a key point there in the note, as you can see, it is not intended to say, the council will not say we must all agree or nothing can happen. That's not the way this initiative will work. Okay, next slide. So here, just a little bit more detail for what the proposal would want to include, again, aligning with the mission of our initiative and focusing on the value added what's not being covered that a particular entity or organization might be able to bring to the initiative. And we really do want to make sure that we have a good balance of representation from all clean energy sectors. Uh-oh. Okay, next slide. My computer went black there for a moment. And so this is what you see here is the results of our brainstorming over the past month or a couple of months. These are our ideas, and we know that there are a lot of other good ideas out there. So we'd love to hear from you who are on the phone right now or on the computer with us. And if there are other folks that you think would be interested in this, we hope that you would share this. So one of the topic we're going to start with, I think, is this nuclear renewable hybrid energy system or integrated energy systems, because this has been the topic that we've heard in various conversations with different countries, that's something that's of great interest to a lot of people or a lot of countries. And then you can see just the whole list there. I don't need to read that for everybody, but looking at drawing on NEA activities or NEA reports, IEA, the International Energy Agency, and Clear Path and Third Way have a great idea for that third nuclear reimagined. And we are really excited about these, but we know that there are other good topics out there that others can share with us. So we are looking for other new great ideas. And the year one set of deliverables that Co mentioned, again, that's from our initial or our draft work plan, which is a work in progress. So that's just, we're starting just looking at year one to see where we get to after that. But we're really looking for some new great big thinking out of the box ideas, and we are excited and hopeful. So just go to the next slide, please. The last slide. We'll have time for questions if there are any. So here you can just see our contact information. And with that, I will just thank you for your attention, your participation, and I think turn it back over to Vicki.
Great. Dion, Co, and Sarah, thank you very much for those great presentations. They were very informative and gave a great overview of the initiative and what's to come, and it's all very exciting. So thank you again for those presentations. Real quickly, as we shift to the Q&A session, I'd just like to remind our audience and attendees to please, if you have questions, submit your questions using the questions box at the right-hand side of your screen, and you can do that at any time. And again, if you have a question that you would like to direct at a specific panelist, please make a note of that in your comments. So a few questions are coming in pretty rapidly here, which is great. The first question that came in is really around asking about some clarity around cross-sectional. What is meant by that? Is a section another technology like wind or solar, or is it something else? And Co, I think you were speaking to that when the question came in, so do you mind taking that one? Or anyone can answer that. Sorry.
Well, I'm happy to comment on it, and my colleagues can join in. Cross-sectoral, I think it has a couple of meanings. One, cross-sectoral across the nuclear industry and renewables, so there is that cross-sectoral, but then also looking at technology, policy, non-governmental, governmental, industry, and so really broadening the conversation to all the different facets that are related to clean energy and nuclear energy. So we're not just talking in our usual networks and our usual sort of energy stovepipes. We're not looking to do R&D in any particular technology. So it's I'm not sure if that's what the questioner was asking about specifically, but it's really just breaking down the boundaries is the way I see it. I hope that helps.
I'll just echo that.
Great.
This is Deanne from Natural Resources Canada. I'll just echo that and say that cross-sectoral, at least from a Government of Canada perspective, really speaks to what is unique about STEM. So if you go back to, if you have a chance to flip back through the slides, you'll recall the list of nuclear fora where we already engage in a series of detailed and valuable discussions amongst the nuclear sector and nuclear experts. So what's unique about STEM is this opportunity to engage across sectors. Nuclear energy and renewable energy policymakers discussing policy solutions across energy subsectors. That's something that's of particular interest to us.
Great, thank you both for helping to answer that question. Is there another question came in around that? Is there a list available about what constitutes a sector, or is it not really defined into a list?
We don't have, Sarah. Yeah, I don't think we have a specific list of what we're trying to cross between, just broadly speaking.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question that came in, this is more towards the initiative itself, are there any guidelines or instructions for submitting proposals to the Nice Future initiative?
Sarah's slide.
Yeah, I think, yeah, one of the slides, or two of the slides, talk about the proposals. I mean, we don't have, standard format at this point, but we just have sort of the guidelines of what we're looking for, that aligns with the objectives and principles, and it targets the key audiences, and an activity that includes all the clean energy stakeholders, but we don't have a template at this point. I'm not sure if STEM generally has something like that, but we don't yet.
It's really a challenge. It's a challenge to stakeholder organizations, the folks who are participating in tonight's webinar, and others, to go back to their home organizations and think about the strategic objectives that we're trying to advance by bringing nuclear energy to the clean energy ministerial process and to clean energy policymakers more broadly. And go back to the basic principles that we set out. We want to provide plain language briefings that challenge clean energy policymakers' baseline assumptions about what nuclear is and isn't, and what the future of nuclear innovation might be able to provide. We want to get to the core of economic modeling and market valuation. We're interested in communications products. We're interested in stakeholder engagement. It's a challenge for organizations to go back and think about what they might be able to propose. What types of activities or initiatives might stakeholder organizations be able to design and drive that could contribute to the overall strategic objectives? And as mentioned before, especially if you can bring on board some non-nuclear stakeholders in a joint initiative. So if you are a representative from an industry association that is deeply connected to nuclear, or you are with an NGO or a civil society organization, can you bring colleagues essentially from across the aisle to the table to help us advance these strategic objectives? This is our challenge to you. And if you have ideas for how you'd like to do that and what you can contribute, we absolutely want to hear from you. And we have this opportunity, this unique opportunity, to give profile to those types of activities at the highest level in one of the leading international fora on this topic. And so we're launching the initiative this year in Copenhagen, but next year in 2019, Canada will host the Clean Energy Ministerial meeting in May of 2019 in Vancouver, where we will have a great deal of flexibility to give lots of profile to the progress that we are able to make under the Nice Future initiative. And we hope that that will include proposals that are brought forward, creative proposals that are brought forward from civil society and from industry. So we don't have preconceived ideas or constraints on what those initiatives might look like and what those activities might look like. It's a challenge. So if you've got an idea, please don't be shy.
Super, thanks so much. Next question, again, regarding the initiative itself. The question is, what is the form or the format of the interface between the initiative and the ministers in the ministerial?
I'm happy to take that question as well. This is Deanne again from Natural Resources Canada. So the ministers at the ministerial will formally launch the initiative, and they will do so on the record during the closed-door ministerial session, but they will also do so in the launch event. And in the launch event, we will have ministers from a handful of countries, the 3 lead countries, and others. We hope to have as many as, we definitely know we have 9 countries, but hopefully by the time May 24th rolls around, we'll have 13 or more countries joining us. And so ministers or heads of delegation from those countries should be at the launch event. And civil society members and others who are speaking at the event will be able to hear questions and also pose questions directly to ministers and have their interventions, and in the case of Third Way's art exhibit, have it viewed directly by ministers. I hope that got to the heart of the question.
Great answer. Thanks, Deanne. That was great. Thanks so much. Okay, next question that came in is, have any of the non-nuclear sectors indicated any willingness to engage with the initiative?
That's an excellent question. This is Deanne again, and I'll ask my colleagues from US and Japan if they'd like to comment as well on this question. This is the toughest nut to crack, so to speak. We are trying to break new ground here. As in many policy areas, energy policy is, for historic reasons, can be siloed, and it is difficult to launch an cross-sectoral or interdisciplinary initiative. That is always a difficult challenge. So we have begun our outreach to our renewables colleagues, and we've had some modest uptake, but there is lots of room to grow on that front for sure.
Yes, I would say, this is Sarah. I would say we've not really done that outreach yet. We've been focusing on just getting the initiative fleshed out, and we are obviously just starting with our networks that we know of. So that's how we sort of started advertising for this webinar, but also information was sent out through the SEM Secretariat to try and broaden the information sharing. But as of yet, we have not, since it hasn't been launched formally, we haven't engaged with the other clean, green energy sectors.
Cool, from Japan. For Japan, I haven't yet about like the inviting the non-nuclear sector people, but like a nuclear people have been focusing on the nuclear, and renewable people in Japan also focusing on the renewables, excluding the nuclear. But I think like in the future, I think like a nuclear and renewables should be collaborate, or like we as a policymaker, we should think about both options and not separatedly. So then like we kind of talked with specialists outside the government or who study about this kind of a new field. So not yet, but we hope to invite like the person, non-nuclear people as well.
Great, thanks to all three of you for helping to answer that question. Let's see, a few more questions to possibly address in this webinar. Let's see, how is nuclear energy considered to be clean? Sarah, would you like to take that one?
Sure. I think this is this is something that we've really been trying to get the word out in the Office of Nuclear Energy, and we have some great new information on our website. And basically, nuclear energy produces around-the-clock zero-emission energy. It doesn't pollute as fossil fuels do. And in the U.S., for example, nuclear generates 60% of carbon-free electricity in our country. So in that sense, it is clean. It doesn't produce, mercury, smog, particulates, nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxide, and there's a whole more, a lot more science behind that. But I mean, that's the short answer. It doesn't pollute. So I guess that's the short answer. Given the time that we have, I'll stick with that.
Super, thank you. Anyone else have anything to add?
Yes, I'd like to add from the perspective of the Government of Canada. The Clean Energy Ministerial for us was born out of the climate change negotiations and is deeply or inextricably linked to our commitment when we signed on to the Paris Agreement to curb our emissions and try to achieve the 2-degree scenario. So from Canada's perspective, the question of climate change is at the core of this question of what we consider to be clean energy. So the fact that it is a non-emitting source of energy is critical in our mission to curb emissions. Canada would not be able to meet our Paris commitment without nuclear energy. Right now, I believe the stat is 60%, over 60% of the electricity in the province of Ontario and over 30% of the electricity in the province of New Brunswick are generated from nuclear, which is about an average of over 15% of the electricity in Canada. Canada is very fortunate to be blessed with hydroelectricity, and so upwards of 80% of our national electricity grid is decarbonized already, but we would not be able to maintain those levels without nuclear. And the province of Ontario is investing $26 billion over the course of 10 years to extend the life of its nuclear power fleet in order to maintain that nuclear capacity, which is absolutely critical for us in terms of displacement emissions.
So for Japan, like maybe you may know, like before the Fukushima accident, we have more than 30% of the nuclear energy. But after that, all our reactors shut down, and gradually some of the reactors restarted, but still very low percentage of the nuclear we have. But we have still have 20 to 22% of the nuclear as the electricity resource by 2013. And of course, like for clean, Paris Agreement or other clean energy goal, we need nuclear. So then but also we need some innovation or technological development, including collaboration between nuclear and other kind of technology such as renewables.
Great, thanks so much. I think we have time for one more question before we close out the webinar. So let's see, the next question that came in is again around cross-sectoral. What do you think the key obstacles are that prevented cross-sectoral integration for clean energy, and how are you addressing those obstacles?
Sorry, Vicki, could you just repeat the first part of that question?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Yeah, so what do you believe to be the key obstacles that are preventing or have prevented cross-sectoral integration for clean energy? I'm assuming they're speaking to renewables in this question, and how can those obstacles be addressed?
I can kick off the discussion on this, and then turn to my colleagues Sarah and Koichiro. From my perspective, again, this is Tian. It's about I think the key challenge is actually about our mental models and the way that we have historically gone about organizing ourselves and organizing our work and organizing our ideas. I think it's easy to think along silos or sectoral lines. We work within specific organizations or ministries or economic sectors, and we have well-established networks within our areas of expertise, and we all talk the same language, and we all have the same objectives. And when you start to reach across sectors or across disciplines, you start to it is just simply logistically more challenging. It requires a higher degree of creativity. It requires more effort. It requires more patience. It requires more strategic thinking. So I don't think that there are any fundamental reasons that should prevent us from doing this, but it is a different way of thinking about our future energy challenges. The objective to look at the full optionality, and the objective to break down barriers and break down our old mental models and our old ways of thinking about things. I think that's our biggest challenge. I think we can rise to that challenge, but I think that's our biggest challenge.
Super, great. Thanks so much. Anyone else want to take?
So can I talk about?
Okay, go ahead, Ko.
Go ahead.
No, Ko, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So for me personally, I'm responsible nuclear, and the challenge or like the obstacle I feel is like my personal kind of experience. I joined like a SEM meeting last November. I mean, like there's SEM is traditionally only focusing on like non-nuclear clean energy sources. So I joined the meeting, but all members there sitting there is more likely to focusing on the nuclear and renewables. So they are no kind of familiarity with the nuclear. And so this is a kind of one symbolistic kind of showcase, and not only this government level, but also like companies or researchers, all part of the peoples or organization, mainly focusing on only nuclear or only renewables. This is because like for nuclear, in the past, I mean, bigger is better. Economically better. So then like the company utilities or like the manufacturing companies, the person who in charge of nuclear is just focusing on nuclear. They graduated with nuclear and study nuclear and do nuclear, things like that. But as Diana mentioned, we need to break the barrier, because future world, we need not only focusing on nuclear or not only renewables, we need combine them in order for better kind of better electricity future.
Yeah,
so,
I would just add one. Sorry. Okay. One last thought is, I think one of the obstacles is just information sharing. As was mentioned, we have these stovepipes of information and just a lack of understanding. People think of nuclear in a certain way, and that's one thing that the Department of Energy Office of Nuclear Energy is really trying to change, is the way people think about nuclear. And people might not think about the negatives that they have heard about in the media and things that have happened in the past, but that's not today's nuclear. And I think if we can this is the way we overcome that obstacle is the sharing of information, and having nuclear focused people talking to the hybrid energy super folks out at, at our Idaho National Laboratory, and where we're doing really good work on creating these new energy systems of the future. And so once you start talking about how you can put these together, and then you break down those stereotypes and say, oh, well, there are smaller reactors, and they're not necessarily these huge mammoth things with the big smokestacks that everybody thinks of, but they're small and they're safe. And I think that's a real key point that we need to press. And I think once you start getting more information out there, that's how you break down those obstacles or the barriers. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks to all of you again for a great presentations, and also for a very informative Q&A session. I just like panelists, for any questions that we did not have time to answer. We'll try to connect you with those attendees offline after the webinar, so you have an opportunity to address any additional questions that came in. And so with that, before we wrap up, I'd just like to provide the panelists with one last opportunity to offer up any additional or closing remarks that you'd like to make before we close the webinar.
I would just say that we are really excited about this new way of thinking about clean energy, and I hope that the people that we've talked to at the NEA and Third Way and ClearPath and other organizations, it seems like now is a great time to really start doing something to make this a reality, and I'm just really excited about it, and I hope others are too.
Couldn't agree more from the Canadian perspective. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dan. And so, again, thank you to our panelists, and I'd also like to extend a very hearty thank you to our attendees for participating in our webinar today. We really appreciate your time and your interest, and we hope in return that you gain some valuable insights into the initiative that you'll take away and take back to your ministries, your departments, your organizations, and your networks. So with that, I'd just like to say to please enjoy. We wish you a great rest of your day wherever you are, and we hope to see you again at nice future webinars and other events. And with that, this concludes our webinar.
Thanks, Vicki.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.